Have you ever played a video game before? Of course you have. Well, I have too. And you know, a lot of my favorite games are RPG or role-playing games. But outside of an entertainment aspect, let's look at video games from an industrial point of view. The video game industry, how big it's become in the last few decades. We've seen video games evolve from a simple Atari with just Pong and a joystick up to DOS, where you're typing in what you want and go boop and have something else for you, up to now 3D graphics with your little controller. Now that's amazing. Not to mention online multiplayer. You can connect with other players from around the world. It's just amazing what it's done. But there's one video game company that stands out to me. It's the Squaresoft, and Square Enix corporations. As a devoted player to Square and Square Enix and Squaresoft games, I've done many research and are not only familiar with their games, but familiar with their company as well. Today we're going to go over the 3 stages of Square. Square, the original corporation, Squaresoft, the North American branch of Square, and then Square Enix, a most recent merger between Square and Enix. We're going to begin today just focusing on Square. Square was founded in 1986 in Japan, Tokyo, Japan, by a small group of Japanese people. As you can see, my dates are 1986 to 2003, before the merger. Square was very well known, not for the first year, but in 1987 when it released Final Fantasy I. A fun fact for you. Square almost went bankrupt before Final Fantasy was released. Final Fantasy was never actually supposed to make the company as big as it was. In fact, it was a last-ditch effort to pull the company from bankruptcy. As we continue, you can see some images of the original Final Fantasy when it came out on the NES, or the Nintendo Entertainment System. As you can see, the graphics are very simplistic. Very, kind of side-scroller like the original Zelda was. There's not too much in depth, not too much, and it's a pretty simple game. And then here you can see Final Fantasy II, which came out on the SNES, or the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, where you can see a lot more vibrant color, a lot more detail, and just names, character design, and enemy design, as well as the background for battle scenes. As we continue, 3 years later, Squaresoft was founded in California. Squaresoft, as I mentioned earlier, is the North American branch of Square. Now don't get me wrong, Square and Squaresoft are not two independent entities. They are the same company, just a different branch. Squaresoft was known very well for its publication of many games, such as Final Fantasy IV, which also came out on the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, Final Fantasy VII, which took Square into a 32-bit graphics world. As you can see, with its very simplistic polygon used to make those 3D graphics, it became one of the biggest sellers on the PlayStation 1 and is still a fan favorite today. As we continue, in the lower left-hand corner here, you can see Final Fantasy IX, where even further use of 3D graphics were made, with even more in-depth character, enemy, and background detail. And then here, in 2002, Squaresoft released Final Fantasy X. Final Fantasy X, as you can see, went even further into putting more 3D and more realistic effect into it. As a matter of fact, Final Fantasy X was also the first Final Fantasy to use voice actors for almost all of their cutscenes, or CGI, which are their movie-related cutscenes. As we continue, also, Squaresoft published the Kingdom Hearts series from the very beginning. In the upper left-hand corner here, you can see Kingdom Hearts, which is a live-action role-playing game, where you are constantly moving around as your character Sora, and it also took not only Final Fantasy characters, but Disney characters and mashed them into one world, capturing not only previous Square audiences, but Disney audiences as well. In the lower left-hand corner here, you can see Kingdom Hearts 2, where it was completely revamped and even further detailed. Now, with these 6 games, this shot Squaresoft into the 32 and 64-bit graphic era, which you now know as your PlayStation 1, your PlayStation 2, 3, and 4. Not only did these games make a name for Squaresoft even further than what it already had, it increased its sales and profits so tremendously, and these old-time games still continue to do so today. And last but not least, we have Square Enix. Square Enix was founded in 2003 with the publishing companies Square and Enix. Enix had been a publisher that has been around since 1978. Much longer, well I shouldn't say much, about 8 years longer than Square was. And with that, Enix had the reputation, not as well known as Square was, but it had the reputation, it just didn't have the funding to keep going. So Square, in order to broaden its efforts, went ahead and bought out Enix and decided to merge together. And this is how you know your Final Fantasies, Kingdom Hearts, and other Square Enix games from 2003 to today. Some of those games include the Final Fantasy XIV A Realm Reborn, which is currently released and will be releasing on the PlayStation 4 here shortly, and other games such as the modern day remake of the original Tomb Raider games, which came out on the PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 under a different company name, and the Hitman series, which also came out under a different name in the PlayStation 2, and it was one of the bigger sellers. Thing is, the publishing company just no longer had the money or the capability to keep going, so Square bought them out. Nowadays, you see Square very prominent, but also with mixed criticism like most companies. Square fans think that they're just putting out more games to not further the name, and that they're lower quality. But still people keep buying them and still making them revenue and profits and furthering their name. Square Enix and Square will forever be written in the video game books of history, and they will continue to be present in our video gaming industry today. My name is Jaden Huber, and this is Square.